Right, welcome all to this meeting of the Scrutiny, Regeneration, Development and Market Hall Committee on the 14th of October 2024. We'll go to item 1. Could we receive any apologies for absent, please, Daniel?
Thank you, Chair. I'm not aware of any apologies.
Okay, thank you. Item 2, is there any declarations of interest? Do any councillors have any declarations of interest to declare on any of the items under discussion at this evening's meeting? No? No? No, that's a no then. I'm not aware of any urgent business for consideration at this meeting. Is that right? Okay. Item 4, we have not received any questions from members of the public either. Item 5, we have not received any questions from members of the committee tonight for this evening's meeting. We'll go on to item 6. I propose the approval of the public minutes from the previous meeting. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Schweib. We will now go to the vote. All those for? Any against? And any abstentions? Councillor Locke. Thank you. We'll go on to item 7. I now invite the Head of Regeneration and Development and the Cabinet Member for Regeneration to provide a presentation. Councillor Hawkins.
Thank you, Chair. So there is a presentation, as you can see, from the whiteboard. Pretty self-explanatory once it gets going. Okay. As you know, the Ward Enhancement Programme is a community capital grant programme where groups can apply for between £10,000 to £50,000 with no explicit match requirement. The funding is only for capital and has been run over 2 rounds. And the guidance was updated between the rounds because, of course, we started off with this really with a blank piece of paper, which I think has been tidied up as we've gone along. And the purpose, obviously, is to deliver or facilitate local regeneration initiatives, and it's specifically linked to the UK Shared Prosperity Fund, from where the grant came. Application forms, as you will know, I'm sure, working with applicants in various wards, are available online, and I'm not going to read through what applicants have to do. I think the most important one is the last one, the project support from the local community. We did have, if not an issue, we had to have clarity after the first few rounds that actually it said specifically, or we were saying specifically, that parish councillors alone could not bid for this, but parish councils and councillors were encouraged to support the bid from local community groups, and also that support from ward members was thought to be important. So each application goes through a gateway check, if you like, assessing priority areas, prosperity impact, etc., and each category can score up to 3, giving a total of 12. And applications have to receive at least a figure of 8 or more to move straight on to the panel. This does mean, of course, that almost every application that we receive reaches the figure of 8. I think it's very rare that one hasn't, mainly because there is a differentiation between the economic wealth of the ward that is applying as against an explanation as how this can bring tourism, etc., into the ward. And in the latter, it tends to be wards in category C that actually can catch up, if you like. So we divided the wards into 3 priority areas: category A, category B, category C, which you know well, I'm sure, all taken from nationally validated data. So there was nothing subjective in this. It was all taken from data that is available to anyone who wants to look about the makeup of the ward, its prosperity, education, housing, etc., etc. So category A, as you can see, consisted of Anglesey, Burton and Eton, Heath, Shobden and Stapen Hill. Category B, Branston, Horlinglow and Outwards, Stretton, Town, Winsill. Category C, Baggerson, Newood, Blythe, Brislingcote, Crown and Dove. So the panel itself has the terms of reference, and its role is to provide an objective assessment of applications to the ESBC WEP grant programme. The panel receives representations or presentations, questions applicants, and then forms a voted judgment on whether an application should be approved. I chair that panel, and other members of the panel include 3 members of the administration, 1 member of the opposition and 1 independent member. And as such, each award is made by me as the Cabinet member via an EDR. It's worth saying at this stage that the panel could be simply for advisory purposes, but I judged and made clear from the opening that I wanted people to feel not only that they were free to judge, assess what they were seeing, but their view was taken seriously. And as such, I have made no decisions independently from the panel. And that, if I can, will be the record I intend to leave with when this finishes. In other words, all decisions made to award grants were made by a vote of the panel. So, as you can see, we've had so far 56 applications with 28 awards. There is one outstanding meeting to be held, which is this Thursday, and 6 more applications are being presented to the panel. They include 3 from applicants in Category A who have had no applications received so far. So in other words, no money has been allocated to them. This is the first time that they have presented applications to the panel. Then there are 3 other applications, 2 from a Category C wards and 1 from a Category B ward. At the present moment in time, we do have 2 wards that have not presented to the panel, and despite the encouragement of the officers to put forward applications, so far that has been unsuccessful. So, subject to the meeting on Thursday, there is £242,000 remaining in the funding pot, and at the end of this month's meeting, I've yet to decide with the panel how we're going to proceed, so I'm not going to preempt that by talking now, but then a decision will be made as to how we move forward. Where we go after that, we do not know. We don't know whether there will be a continuation in some form of the UK Prosperity Fund, or whether it was a final one-off as far as the previous government were concerned, and we can expect no more money from central government. Personally, I hope it does continue, because it isn't just the panel, the WEP panel, that has done good work, but also in developing and encouraging business, particularly through the Business Boost programme. I think that panel, led by Councillor Sheila McKiernan, has done excellent work. And again, working on the same principle that we have worked on the WEP panel, that no executive decisions are taken by vote. And those votes then move the grant application forward. I should say that as a result of the vote, that vote often results in less being awarded than applicants have asked for a variety of reasons, which are always given by the officer to the applicant. And there have been a few grants where we've sat around and said, why didn't they ask for more? But that's after they'd gone. Nothing was said after the meeting. That's just, I think, a human and natural reaction to what you hear from people, what they are doing and what they want to do with the money. I should say that there's a little bit of additional information that you need to receive as we move through looking from page 8 onwards on the grants that have been awarded. So I'll take a little breath there if anybody wants to ask me a question so far.
Thank you, Councillor Hawkins. Would anybody like to ask a question to Rob? Yeah.
Can I ask you a question, Chair? Yeah. Brilliant, thank you. In terms of how applicants are selected, there's obviously the criteria that kind of comes forward and goes through to yourselves. When it gets to the application stage with the committee, is there a set of criteria then that is being applied consistently across all of those applications, or is it just down to kind of the opinion of the committee on the strength of the application itself?
It is down essentially to the opinion of the panel. Nothing comes forward in terms of advice, as far as I'm aware, from officers or from me. Questions are asked by the panel and suggestions are made as to whether it's an application that bears merit or bears some merit, and it's very rare that very rare I think we've turned down applications completely, although not all applications of course come to the panel because they don't meet the criteria, and the sort of triage that is being operated by the regeneration officers is applied. Occasionally I am asked my opinion, and up to now I don't think I've ever said specifically, no, I think I have not disagreed with the advice that's been given to me by the officer. My job is to try and do this as fairly, as evenly as I can. I made a commitment when we introduced this that every ward would benefit. The wards that haven't benefited have been because those wards have not made an application to the panel. But as you'll see later on, in every other respect, every ward, be it category A or B, some in C not, have benefited from the programme.
But I've got a follow-on question, if you don't mind. Speaking to some of the members that have kind of been on the panel, they raised some concerns in terms of the rigour of the decisions that were made at the meetings, and also around the documentation of why certain decisions have been made. Are these constituted meetings kind of with minutes and an audit trail?
Well, as far as I'm aware, we've followed the terms of reference that I spoke about earlier. If there are examples where we haven't followed the terms of reference, then I'd be very glad to hear about them and would respond to that.
And then final question for this part. Have there been any applications, I think you mentioned there about the officers, but have there been any applications where the committee have recommended it, but then you haven't taken it forward for the WEP, or are all the ones that the committee have voted for kind of gone forward for allocation of the money?
I'm not aware. We did have a conversation about, I think 1 or 2 applications where that ward had already received a number of applications successfully. And I felt, as I said, and people agreed with me, that we had to let this run on so that everybody had an opportunity to put in applications on behalf of their ward.
Okay, thank you.
But again, if I'm wrong on that, don't believe I am, but if I'm wrong on that, I'll be happy to address the issue.
Thank you.
Okay.
Are there any more questions? Councillor Locke?
I apologise for stressing a point that that's already been raised by Councillor Clark, but given you've mentioned the importance of voting and fairness, I was just wondering, I appreciate the terms of reference said that there wouldn't be minutes to these meetings, but why wouldn't there be minutes? I mean, there are significant amounts of money going through the WEP. Shouldn't there be some sort of publicly available record to indicate what the discussions were beyond what the end decision is?
We are going to review the 2 years of operation, and it may well be up and will be considered. This going, people were very happy with the decisions that we're making, as far as I'm aware. And we had terms of reference by which we operated, which we did so, I think, very strictly, or as strictly as we could. And the minutes were basically the application, whether it was accepted or the reasons why it wasn't, or the reasons why the full amount wasn't given. I would take those as a perfectly good record. We actually are having all of our decisions reviewed, aren't we, Tom?
Okay, Tom. Yes, that's you.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, so each meeting does have minutes and meeting notes that go with them, and the EDR that's taken for each award forms part of the public record of the decision taken, as mentioned just by Councillor Hawkins, at the request of the Cabinet member. The Internal Audit Service is doing a review of the Ward Enhancement Programme as well, just to pick up on any recommendations that might improve governance moving forward.
Thank you. Any questions so far still? No? Would you like to continue then, Councillor Hawkins? Yeah.
Right, thank you, Chair. So if we go through wards alphabetically by category, now I have to say that some of putting these down has not been easy. For example, some applications were multi-ward. So, for example, making trails, which has been hugely successful, as you will have seen both by the quality of the barrels on show, by the comments that we had for it. That was divided equally between 3 wards because it was cited in 3 wards, and therefore I felt it was important that each ward bore their share. When we come on to Shobland at the end, that would appear to be disproportionately awarded, but that's only because 3 actually, of the awards, significant awards, which came to over £60,000, were not happened to be brought to the panel because the organisations that were sporting organisations happened to be based in Shobnall. And so what I asked the officers to do, and it will appear on the finished article, was to divide the amount of money that was spent on those 3 sporting organisations in Shobnall, and there was another one in Winsill, that they should be that money should be shared between the 11 wards which I believed would benefit from it. That is those 11 wards within Burton and surrounding Burton, and for the purposes of this exercise, wards in Uttoxeter, Heath and Town, Crown, Stramshall and Weaver and Blythe were not included in that calculation. So it'll make a difference when we come to the final calculations, and you do need to bear that in mind. So we look at the grants to Anglesey, as you can see, to the Jemiah Mosque, to Hazara Society, to Burton Caribbean Association, and a third of the cost of the Making Trails scheme. Grants awarded to Burton and Eton included St Chad's Community Centre, the New Testament Church of God, the Riverside Church, and Making Trails. There was a preponderance there of churches there because they were offering facilities and were actually facilitating the use of their buildings for community-based organisations to run excellent programmes. And then Heath, as yet, nothing has come in from Heath, although there are some applications, as I understand it, for Thursday. Heath being a Category A ward, clearly has not put in as many as other areas. There has been, with my agreement, some crossing over in Uttoxeter, because where Heath ward ends and the town ward begins isn't always very clear, and almost all of the applications have been for community type activities which serve the whole community but straddle sometimes between town ward and Heath ward, and that was done with the agreement of the councillors, particularly those from Heath ward. And then Shobnall, you need to take out Burton Athletics Club, Barton Hockey Club, Grange Tennis Club, because they are shared activities, and you can see that takes the money that was allocated to Shobnall ward down really by quite a lot. I'll go on to category B, but if anyone wants to ask me questions on category A awards, I'm very happy to answer them as far as I'm able.
Any questions?
I suppose
Good luck.
one quick question, just in regards to quite a few of those were sports organisations, some of them buying equipment or kind of doing up funds. Were they also then linked up with the Sports Council in terms of either future funding or additional funding for these applications?
Yes, they were. In fact, to almost every application, we ask, who have you applied to for funding? Whether it's a sporting body or whether it's a local community body, parish council or what have you. And although we don't expect, and it's not a requirement that there should be matched funding, I think it's fair to say that almost every application has come up with some element of match funding, whether it's actually in terms of capital or whether it's in terms of the time that people have given in order to facilitate the change or the improvement that has been asked for. On to Ward B. Now, Branston is rather different. We did talk for quite a while to the Branston councillors, ward councillors, who were talking amongst themselves and to the parish council. And the projects that were being put forward were either for projects that were not capital based or were for projects that we felt fell outside of the remit of the ward enhancement programme. However, they were extremely keen to finish a significant play area called Henhurst. But this was something that needed somewhere in the region of £100,000. Now, the parish council, which was Branston Parish Council, had allocated, I think it was £30,000 towards this, which is a not insignificant amount of money. So we took £33,000 from the ward enhancement programme, and in order to facilitate this, remembering that there was a playground scheme already, the councillors from Branston agreed that the £33,000 that had been allocated to Branston via the playground scheme should be used to complete that project. So that project was made up by a third being granted by the ward enhancement programme, a third being awarded by parish council, and a third by bringing forward the amount of money which is £33,000, that as a category B council ward, they could expect to get through the playground scheme. Although the playground scheme is not part of this, I'm happy just to say to you, and I'll answer your questions if you must, but I don't care. I will, of course I will. The playground scheme had to have some way of balancing out the monies here, and based on the money that we had available, taking out of the equation both the Heath in Utoxeter and Shobnall in Burton, because they were the recipients of, between them, of £150,000 of COMF awarding, which is to do with COVID Management Fund, those of you who know. So they were taken out of the equation. And the sum of money was divided quite simply. If you're a Category A ward, you would be awarded £50,000. If you're a Category B ward, you would be awarded £33,000. And if you're a Category C ward, with the exception of Crown, and I'll come on to that later, you would be awarded £22,000. So all wards in the borough, with the exception of Heath and Shobnall, and at the moment, Crown, can expect to get that money through the work that is being done on facilitating the improvement of those play areas which are thought to be in need of work and which would be done, I expect, with the cooperation of the ward councillors. So anyway, that was an innovative way of making sure that a major project in Branston, which served not just Branston, but I believe outwards as well, because where they were was very close to the border. And you can't always differentiate who is going to use what. So that's Branston. Heath, as I've said, sorry, comes up later. Yep, let me go on to Horning Glow. Horning Glow was one of the first to apply and one of the last, and we accepted that the applications on both occasions by the Red Lion Community Centre were that strong that we granted that organisation 2 elements of the grant in separate years, I have to say, to help them finish the project off. And I hope that £60,000 has been helpful to them in carrying on the outstanding work that they've been doing thus far. Stretton, you can see there was an award of £12,500 for car parking around St Mary's Church, which is important, I think, for the village itself, apart from the church. And also the Clay Mills Pumping Engine Trust, we awarded £37,500. They're doing fantastic work, but also have an ambitious scheme to put a new entrance, bring in new toilets, just gradually significantly upgrade the appearance of the place. And I think it's probably one of those little known gems because I'd never heard of it really until this panel, that was well worth supporting. Horning Glow, as I've done. In town, it's the support went to Wilfred House Community Centre, which needed a new roof, and has got one's flat roof. Not what you're thinking. How can you get a tiled roof for £22,000? You can't. It's a flat roof. But also the almshouses in New Toxteth, where some of our most needy people were living in a place where there were leaks and poor conditions all over the place. Actually, this is also an example of how one grant can trigger another. When we interviewed the applicants, the question was asked, well, I asked it actually, was how much they had in reserve. And being a charitable trust, they did not hold the reserve per se, but that was being held by the Charities Commission, who wouldn't release it. However, on receipt of the information that ESBC, through the Ward Enhancement Programme, had actually awarded this grant to the almshouse, the Charities Commission then released part of their reserve, so the whole job was done. The roof was replaced, the roof tiles were replaced, the windows were repaired, elements of the to live in. Well done. And then Winshill, it says the Canoe Club, but that was just because the Canoe Club was in Winshill. Not the Canoe Club, sorry, the Rowing Club. They received a grant for their Canoe Club, but also for their Neighbourhood Resources Centre. And there is another application from, I'm not going to say from whom at the moment, because the panel hasn't talked about it. There's another application from the Winshill Ward to be adjudicated upon on Thursday. And on to category C, as you can see, Baggots and Needwood. And Kingston. This was an unusual award, but we felt that we could make it, having spoken to senior officers and elsewhere, to try and mitigate against a road accident waiting to happen at a very dangerous crossroads, which the County Council, despite its vast majority, decided that they couldn't use. There wasn't any money in the highways budget in order to make changes there. This had been promoted by a group actually led by Kingston WI, but including members of the farming community, the village community, and we were persuaded that we should help. And hopefully with what we gave, with the money they raised, which was a lot, but that would they'd be able to reach, I think it was the £80,000, don't want to be quoted on that one, that was needed to do the work. So that was unusual. We hummed and hawed over that, but we felt on balance that was of great good to the community and would help to bring prosperity, not least of all because there would not be, we hoped, any serious accidents or life-changing injuries to people in the wards. To Dove, we awarded, as you can see, to the Rolleston Station Heritage Group, but also the Friends of Brook Hollows, very much environmental, I think, awards. And there is another application outstanding, which is from Tutbury, which I believe is in the Dove ward. Stramshall and Weaver also received an award, and as you can see, and there is another application from the Stramshall and Weaver Award on the agenda for our meeting on Thursday. So that's another Category C award to receive funding. And so far you can see, taking into account, there has to be some adjustment and amendment on the basis of what are, after all, shared facilities. But Category A wards have received £365,406 and 25p. Category B wards, £254,647 and 26. Category C wards, 102,000, but since there are 2, if not 3 on the books on that, that will go up significantly after Thursday. But no awards have yet been made to Stapenhill, although that should be addressed on Thursday, but that's still only 1 award. Brislin Coat still as yet have put forward no applications, and Crown put forward 1 application, but it was deemed to be not something that we could look at because we felt it was a responsibility of another organisation, which I'm not going to name here, but that's the reason. We've been talking to them, and as I've been talking to Tom and to Jonathan Percival, that I want to have a discussion after Thursday about what we're going to do about Crown particularly, which because of its lack of facilities, for example in Draycott in the Clay, there is no play area for children, and therefore it has been excluded from an allocation. How can you allocate something to refurbish which isn't there? So I am minded to talk to the officers about what we might do to help facilitate even more some support for Draycott in the Clay, particularly towards getting a play area of their own. That's a significant village to be without a play area, as I think most people would agree. And at the back, there is, as you can see, total awards by project type. Perhaps I could go through that, having had a sip of tea while I answer questions about the awards to the various wards.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Hawkins. Any questions that you'd like to put towards Councillor Hawkins on what he's just said? Councillor Clark?
I have one question in regards to that, and then I've got some questions around kind of the future element. On the question on that, so the application by the Women's Institute, technically that application would fall under the responsibility of another organisation, but was brought forward and kind of accepted by the panel. What's the difference between that application and the one in Crown which hasn't been brought forward?
Because this was a change that couldn't be made by anything other than highways, whereas we felt that the situation of the application in Crown and the request that we had from the organisation should be referred to, which we did, and should be met by another organisation. In other words, there was another organisation that could assist at the very least with what was required through that application. But as far as Kingston was concerned, nobody was helping. And it isn't just the WI. It came in under the WI as a community type group. The parish councils were involved, local schools were involved, local farmers were involved. Farmers were giving land in order for this project to take place, and we felt there was such merit in it. And if it's anything was a community-led project, this was it, that it deserved some funding from us.
Thank you. I have some questions about kind of the future of the programme. Maybe I was going to agree. So one of the reasons we kind of asked you to come here tonight as well is I'm quite interested to hear how you're kind of monitoring kind of the implementation of these programmes and then assessing their assessing the state of them and how well they've gone towards achieving the goals of the ward enhancement programme, prosperity in kind of in general in those areas, but also some of the projects in there are things that could be looked to, although they were kind of capital expenses, could be looked to extended out in future years. Has any thought been given to that in terms of the monitoring of them and whether either ESBC or other organisations that we have links to could help kind of take those projects forward further?
Well, I think there are several parts of an answer to that. We have actually turned down projects because it's deemed that they actually were the responsibility of ESBC. And in fact, I think one of them at least has come up as part of the corporate plan, which is a good thing for that organisation. There are others that we would like to have helped, but very much it was about seeking accommodation, which we were not able to do. As far as monitoring is concerned, I'm satisfied that given the amount of officer time that is dedicated to this, we are effectively monitoring both the applications, but also the spending, and money is not released, as you would expect, unless certain criteria. And going forward, well, I think that's something we can talk about in a few minutes, talking about what happens when this ends, as it will, when all the money has been spent by the 31st of March, which it must, as you know, as part of the UK Prosperity Fund. Where do we go from here? Because I think just to stop like that, when actually a lot of things have been done, and we've discovered that a lot of things need to be done, we need to think as a council, not just as administration, how we might proceed with these ideas in future.
Would you like to come in, Tom?
Yes, please. Thank you, Chair. For each project, there's a grant agreement between the council and the applicant that sets out a number of conditions associated with the delivery of the project and the grant, but in particular, it has scheduled to it approved items of expenditure for capital spend and agreed outputs and outcomes. So just picking an example at random in front of me without saying which project, there's approved items of expenditure which are the purchase of seatings and stands, and outcomes around increasing membership and increasing number of activities using the facilities. So those things are monitored through the delivery of that agreement, with payments made in tranches of 2 or 3 payments rather than sort of a singular grant. The end of programme review should also pick up on progress to date, dating back to the start of the programme some 13 months ago now. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Tom. What do you want to continue?
So I think
Mr. Hawkins?
obviously there are some things that can be monitored. If, as part of the application, there is an expectation that X, Y and Z will happen, both in terms of footfall or membership or what have you, then officers can go back and find out whether what was thought to be able to happen has actually happened. So you can look at, if you like, hard evidence like that, the number of people, etc. And there are other things that obviously can be looked at, and an assessment could be made of the advantages they bring. One community centre had a lift, but it didn't work. And to me, being disabled, to have a community centre with a lift that didn't work did not help, especially the elderly and infirm. And so I didn't make a decision. It was a unanimous decision that we would support this particular application to repair that lift, so access was made available to everyone within that community. And that's good use of money. How can it be judged? Well, simple question. What is the upstairs room, or what are the upstairs rooms used for? And how can you quantify the usage by the number of times people use the lift? That's relatively crude, but pretty straightforward.
Is that everything, Councillor Hawkins? Anything else? Councillor Lott, would you like to ask a question?
Partially an observation, really, considering you were talking about reflecting on the success of the programme. That final category there, capital funding towards digital infrastructure, I can't help wondering if a misstep was made there, given I'm aware of one application that went in that got bounced because effectively they were trying to rent infrastructure rather than buying servers. Even this council tries to avoid buying servers these days. I was wondering whether maybe revenue costs should have been allowed as well as capital. I wonder what your thoughts were on that.
That it was a pity that on occasion we didn't take revenue into account, because I think there were several applications of real merit, engaging and involving the community, which actually were based on revenue funding rather than capital funding. And when we review the whole thing, and it's going to take some reviewing to do, with the panel predominantly, because they've been at the front edge of this, but also obviously with the officers involved, I think there will be several things that have come up that we think that if we were to continue with this, we would need to make some changes. Don't forget, I don't know if this is, I don't care if this has ever been done before. We did it. We've managed to allocate, I think, a lot of money to help a lot of people within the borough. But I'm not saying we got it right or perfect. We started really with a blank page, which we filled in. We stopped and had a review after the end of year one. We're going to stop and have a review at the end of this year, year two, and hopefully there will be a year three with a continuation of funding. What it will look like in relation to this, well, I can't see it's going to look like at the higher end there are going to be £50,000 grants. This was a one-off really, because of the amount of money that was in the UK Prosperity Fund, and which we had to spend by the 31st of March 2025. So whatever we have going forward, and I genuinely hope there will be funding going forward, whether it's from HMG or whether it's through the council itself, and that, as you know, might be quite difficult. But I think that where we are next time, that all the rubric at the front of this will have some significant alterations and amendments.
Tom?
I think the bottom line is we've learnt as we've been going along. Now it's nearly finished. I think we've got a lot to reflect on and digest before we come back with a final report. And a final report will be made for the whole council. And no doubt you might want me to come back again, a chair, to talk about that. Don't know, it's up to you. But there will be an openness about this. No one's going to say, that's it, done, dusted, move on. You don't spend sort of £1.3 million of public money and then say that's it, then done.
Thank you. Tom, would you like to come in?
Thank you, Chair. I certainly take the point on revenue. It's a difficult one, though. I mean, the funding used for this project was capital from the outset, which obviously limited what we could do there. It's more often the case that for project-based schemes, funding is capital because it's easier to demonstrate the fixed life of the project. It's one-off expenditure rather than ongoing subsidy. That's not to say that a revenue version of the scheme couldn't exist in the future, but being bound by those parameters, particularly with the spend deadline, was quite key. I can't recall the details of that particular project, and I wonder whether we suitably explored whether the life of that rent could be capitalised or not. But you know, I'm more than happy to sort of try and remind myself of the project and look into it. But sometimes there are ways in which it's about structure more than anything else. But thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Tom. Anything else, Councillor Hawkins?
No.
Okay.
Do we want to consider what might happen in the future?
Would everyone like to know that?
Councillor
Yep.
Clark was quite keen on talking about that.
Yeah, I think you kind of touched on it in your closing remarks there. I think certainly from this scrutiny, and I know the value for money scrutiny has expressed an interest in seeing that final report and particularly making sure that the council, not just the council, but also the community's got value for money out of those projects, and that the outcomes were delivered for the wider benefit. I think there's, depending on kind of the outcome or the depth of that final report, there's possibilities there for future scrutiny reviews in terms of making recommendations to shape the fund or the structure of it or something like that, particularly if it is looking to continue. But no, I feel like your comments at the end kind of touched upon it in terms of next steps in the future and whether additional funding will be coming forward.
Yeah, we've been through a lot and learnt a lot, and I think, funnily enough, we do it better next time. If we don't do it better next time, we've not learnt much, have we? I think the question of what impact each of the awards has had on the wards, that's something as well that ward members can become involved in, and finding out, well, you supported it, did it have the impact that you hoped it would in your ward? But I think there has to be also a more formal way of looking at that, and I think that's something that we'll be discussing. How do we, now that this particular part of the project through the UK Prosperity Fund is finished, how do we then, as an organisation, assess on how well it's gone? Not just theoretically, but practically, in the places where the money was allocated.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hawkins. That was very informative, and we hope to see you back, and then you can give us an update on how things have gone. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Can I stay for the rest of the meeting? Having missed EastEnders, I'm quite interested to stay.
If you'd
and
like
find
to
out
stay,
what happens.
Councillor Hawkins, you're welcome to stay.
Thank you.
Right, we're going to item 8 now, and if James and Declan can provide us with an update, please.
Thanks, Chair. So the purpose really of this item, standard item really, is just to ensure that as a scrutiny committee we continue to have an effective work programme. And as we know, we've got the one ongoing review on the programme at the moment, which is into the market hall operations, and we'll hear from Declan in just a moment on the progress of that review. So I didn't want to steal any thunder away from Declan on that point, but I think we'll see some real momentum with that one in the very near future. We've obviously just had a very good discussion on the ward enhancement programme. I think we'd sort of indicated previously that this would be a topic that we'd try to understand and deal with through a single meeting rather than it needing to be one of those ongoing reviews. But obviously we've had that discussion there around potentially coming back. So it's worth just confirming that we want to perhaps look at this again at the relevant point in future, perhaps with outcomes, etc. So that's no doubt one that we probably want to keep on the agenda without speaking for the committee. We might also want to turn our attention potentially to other topics as well. So, of course, any ideas are welcomed on that. I think we mentioned previously that what is generally a good idea is to keep one, maybe two ongoing reviews on the programme. An approach that seems to work is to have a single meeting topic as well, using this approach similar to what we've seen this evening to sort of focus in on a particular topic on each meeting, as well as having that ongoing work going on in the background, so to speak. So happy for any ideas really from across that regeneration, development or market hall area to be put forward for consideration by the committee, so we can keep that keep that programme up to date, whether that be an ongoing review or a single meeting issue type of topic. But through you, Chair, while members mull that over, perhaps at this point we can bring Declan in just to provide a very short update on the progress and next steps in terms of the ongoing market operations review.
Okay. Thank you, Declan.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I mean, yeah, we had the scoping paper was agreed recently, which has given us those questions that need answering on the operation of the market hall. And some of those questions are very technical, some of them not so technical, which has given us an abundance of raw data, which we're currently working through and trying to collate into something that's a bit more palatable for you guys to read. Pages and pages of numbers and words without context isn't helpful for anybody. So at the moment, I suppose to give you an overview of what we have got, we've spoken to about half a dozen similar market halls and local authorities who run similar projects to what we have, and they've managed to provide us through sort of FOI requests, occupancy rates and footfall numbers, and the upturn of what they've done, so whether it's converting it to a food hall or an enterprise event centre, the upturn of doing that from its previous usage. So we've got lots of data around that, which we just want to be able to get in the best format for you, really. One of the things which is standing out, which we're missing, sorry, from the scoping paper is the need to survey the traders, so past and present, really. And what I think we're going to try and do in the next couple of weeks is get a meeting in the diary to see how we're going to do that, whether it's, we've recently done a public consultation, whether it's something else which goes online or whether we actually go and meet people. So it's kind of down to the committee really on how we want to move forward with that survey. So there'll be something in the diaries in the next couple of weeks to try and flesh that bit out. And then it's a work in progress, getting a report which we can present to you as with our findings, basically.
Thank you. Anything else, James?
No, just to say exactly that. I think, as Declan's touched on there, there's a wealth of information that's been gathered. So I know since we last met, there has been a lot of work ongoing to do that data gathering. The next stages are, as Declan's alluded to actually now for the members to start looking into that data, looking at what we need to do next as next steps. So we'll certainly get the group in on a Zoom or an in-person meeting if that's helpful. So we'll ascertain availability and get that moving to try and, like I say, build that momentum now.
Has the committee got any ideas for anything you like the one meeting? Councillor Lott?
I will be interested if we could get someone to come in and talk about the maintenance backlog, current state of maintenance and the budget for maintenance for the market hall, given it's been over a year and a half or so since I've seen any kind of reporting into the state of the building, which obviously it required a lot of work back then, so I'd be interested in an update there. That might mean Tom losing another evening of his life, I'm afraid, but he's going to delegate. That's okay then. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that's a good one there, Councillor Lott. Is everybody agreed with that we could do that? Yeah. Okay. Anything else that anybody would like to look at? Councillor Clark?
I just like to say, I definitely think we should keep one in our back pocket around the ward enhancement programme, particularly as we get the final review and what we can do to either kind of go through that and scrutinise that element of it, or what we can do if such funding does become available in the future to kind of shape that as well. I don't necessarily think it's one for now, but I think it's one for the future as kind of a future body of work to look at once we've got some kind of further delivery from some of these projects.
Thank you. Is there anything else we'd like to look at apart from the market or the ward enhancement? Is there anything else that we'd like to scrutinise? The
only other one probably worth considering, which was raised in the VFM committee, but is probably more of a regen element, is into the Maltings project and the current state of that, as well as what happens to that project in the future if the Maltings element doesn't become available, given that part of the site has been purchased by the council, and what are the kind of the forward plans for that. I know one of the concerns raised at the VFM committee was also around the fact that there was so much work and consultation that went into that over several years, in terms of commissioning studies, public consultation, developing plans, going back to the public and so on, and what impact that had in terms of the timeline for the delivery of the project, and then what kind of financial implication that's had on the council as well. So that's also one that we should definitely consider, I think, as an element of what happens to UTOX regeneration more broadly.
So yeah, absolutely. So I mean, is that something that we potentially think it would be one to have a presentation or a discussion in the meeting rather than something that's more ongoing? Again, just one to throw out there. So it could be that we have discussions on the maintenance and the maltings at the next meeting, and keep the market hall as that ongoing piece of work. Just thinking out loud, but again, it's the will of the committee.
Yeah. Is everybody happy with that, that we have discussions about those two and then keep the Market Hall one going? Because obviously we've got the consultation to come back on that one, haven't we? To look at for the Market Hall. We haven't had anything really about that, have we?
So, as Declan sort of mentioned, really, there's a wealth of information that we've got that we're just, you know, like I say, we're trying to sift, because there is quite a lot, sift, but, you know, organise, I should say, to make it palatable, as we've said there. So, yeah, absolutely, we'll get something in the diary to speak Market Hall specifically, and then we'll look at organising those presentations, discussions for the next meeting of the committee to pick up those other two topics.
Thank
And
you.
of course, you know, if there's other ideas in the meantime, then absolutely fine for those to come in through yourself, Chair. And we can obviously look at, you know, the specifics. If there are specific questions, again, that want to be raised as part of those conversations, it's perhaps also useful to, you know, throw those into the mix now, so to speak, or between now and the next meeting. So we, for example, if there's technical information, specific pieces of data that it's useful to, for the relevant people to bring to those meetings, it's good to know so we get the most out of those sessions. So again, just a little bit of food for thought there.
Tom.
With your discretion, Chair, just with regards to the maltings item, obviously if any part of the scope of that relates to ongoing commercial negotiations, some of that may have to be redacted or take place in Part B of the meeting, but if that is explored between now and the next meeting, I'm more than happy to advise on which parts can be in Part A and Part B accordingly. Thank you.
Thank you. Which will be the 9th of January 2025, which is quite a way away. So item 10, the public executive decisions. A list of the public executive decisions have been circulated with the agenda. Does anyone have any questions on any of these? No? Okay. Item 11, Quarter 1 Performance Report. I now invite James to provide a Quarter 1 Performance Report. Please note that Appendix 2 and 3 will be considered in the private part of the meeting, so if councillors have any points to discuss on these sections, please raise them in the private part. Thank you, James.
Thanks again, Chair. So this is the Quarter 1 Performance Report. So as always, we're looking at the Council's progress towards achieving its corporate priorities at the end of the quarter of this financial year, along with the latest updates on the leisure contract as well as the Towns Fund programme. But if we focus firstly on the corporate plan, looking at the 79 live targets that we have, this equates to the council being at 94.94% green overall. It's just 1.27% amber and just 3.8% red, using the usual traffic light style system of ratings. So as you can see, the numbers suggest that, you know, the council's corporate performance continues to be very positive in general. The small number of red and amber targets that I've mentioned, they are detailed in the tables you can see on pages 8 and 9 of the main report. They just provide a bit of narrative to give that context around the situation with each of those indicators. And the report goes on to provide the information on the performance of the leisure operating contract. So you can see that detailed in section 6. Similarly, that's a very positive picture there as well. And then finally, we have the performance of the Towns Fund programme. So that's in section 7 of that main report. So we've obviously got the updates on the council's own high street linkages project. We also have a positive picture presented there as well on the 3 partner projects in the programme as well. As we mentioned, there is that additional information provided in the 2 appendices that members will see later on in the agenda this evening, and that's a very high-level summary. The information generally is painting a positive picture, but happy to take any questions or take any questions away.
Thank you, James. Are there any questions for James? Councillor Clark.
I have one in relation to the preserving the brewhouse element, which may be able to answer here rather than taken away. But it mentions that the framework will be ready to go out during August. Did that framework go out in August?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, and I think from recollection, it's today that the tender closed. So I don't yet know the outcome there.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, thank you, James. sorry. We have 3 items to consider in the private part. So I now move that in accordance with section 100A4 of the Local Government Act 1972, the press and public be excluded from the remainder of the meeting, as it is likely, in view of the nature of the business to be transacted, or the nature of the proceedings, that there would be disclosed exempt information as defined in the paragraphs of Part 1 of Schedule 12A of the Act indicated in brackets before each item number of the agenda. Do I have a seconder?
Should I go?
Councillor Clark. All agreed? Thank you.